let's move on to the asset classes. You talked about that. You talked about, crypto and not sort of being zoned in on only one type of asset class. I know you at your fund, you guys are very diversified. You guys invest in many different asset classes, and you are dealing with many different types of investors, mostly more towards the institutional type, but you're having conversations with a broad range of investors. As we mentioned multiple times, you're a very adept networker. So kind of tell me how you came to the realization that besides these mentors that you had in your life, or people that, kind of gave you more insight in regard to diversification, how did you kind of transition, or what was your journey as an investor? And because I know you have a lot of LP possessions. When I say a lot, a lot.
Too many.
Yeah. So tell me kind of how you started transition, when that happened from more traditional multifamily, or did you start in multifamily? Because I don't know kind of how you got into investing.
Yeah, I actually started investing, since I was 13. So my bar mitzvah gift present from a bunch of Jewish ladies was stipulated as you have to buy a stock. And the point was the research involved and, the process of understanding the value of money. And, that was how I was raised. I was raised a little differently than most people. I often tell the joke that instead of bedtime stories from my father, I got stories about the Hunt brothers trying to corner the silver market. I learned from my grandfather very early.
You have such a unique childhood though, too, because you had some friends that, would be considered rough and tough by, I think, a normal metric growing up in Hawaii, running with some guys and having some friends that, they had a little bit of an edge to them. And then you also had, some sophistication as far as investing. I think it's quite unique.
Yeah, I always gravitated towards it early on because I enjoyed the stories and I just found it fascinating talking to, with my grandfather would always want me to sit on his lap and read, this, you got to remember, this is a long time ago. This is pre-internet. So, the newspaper, and he'd want to know who hit the 52-week highs and lows and the stocks he owned. He wanted to know the volume and, if they were up or down and all these. And he was looking at who was ex-dividend, and he was very interested in all these things. And this was a gentleman that was all self-educated. He didn't go to college. He was a second-generation entrepreneur. And, his brother-in-law, same thing. He owned a shoe store. But, he was a very good stock trader, better than he was more of a trader. My grandfather was more of an investor. My mother's uncle was more of a trader. But, these gentlemen religiously read the Wall Street Journal. They were all very self-educated. It wasn't like they worked long hours, but like at 7 o'clock when they punched out of work at their business, the day wasn't over. They still had payrolls to do, but they were still reading. They were reading things like the Wall Street Journal, and they would have investment clubs in their little small town. There was a very different mindset about, I guess, control in terms of Jewish culture of, like you go and make what you want out of life. You don't sit around waiting for life to come to you or people to give you things. And there's a faith or belief that you're good enough, smart enough that if you put the effort in, you will see these rewards. It's hard to describe, but like the people I grew up with, there wasn't any doubt in their mind. It was just about just work, just keep iterating.
Gotta go do it.
Yeah, you just work hard. You just keep working harder, or you spend more time on it. There was never any issue about if I succeed, it'll just be when. And they didn't spend much time on when. When will be when it happens. It sounds simplistic or naive in a sense, but most of the best entrepreneurs that I've met, they don't spend much time on when. In their mind, it's any day now, and they're just going to keep grinding. And whether it's next week or next year, it doesn't really. But like the idea of failure.
And what else would you do? What else would you do?
But the concept of failure just doesn't really, register in them. My father, I think, had 3 mortgages on his house. A wife that was a homemaker had just adopted a baby. He laughs. He always says to me, "There's no safety net." He always laughs. Like, the analogy we always make is like the Ringling Brothers Circus, or I forget the famous trapeze artists. But like for the trapeze artist, there's no safety net. You're up there and it's beyond sink or swim. It's either perform or die. It's a hell of a motivator. But my father laughed. He said, I was never really afraid of following. It just, it sounds a little insane, but it's just like you have this belief that you're just gonna make it work, and that's it. There's just you just have to make it work. And when guys say, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to corporate. Or, if it doesn't work out, I'll move in with my parents. I can work with my dad. Or if it doesn't work out, yeah, my wife has a big salary. I often cringe because I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, this isn't going to work. Right, Jonathan?
It's interesting. I think for some people, that little security blanket that if this, then this helps them get over the hunch or the hump. But I am 100% more aligned with, your father in my thinking and yours. At the end of the day, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to make it happen. And I'm going to learn from what happened yesterday, and today is going to be better. And then tomorrow I'm going to get up and make it happen. And I'm going to learn from what happened today, and I'm going to get better. And I'm just going to do that every single day for as long as it takes to get where I want to be. And then that needle keeps moving, because it really becomes about the journey. And then you relate things more to, you see these really professional athletes that are amazing, like, Djokovic or Nadal or Federer or, Michael Jordan or Kobe or any of these really, really successful athletes. It becomes about getting better forever. It's not, you can win 20 majors, you can win 6 championships. They want to get better every day. And I think that applies so directly to the point you're making, Andy, about being an entrepreneur. It becomes about, you can call it the game. It becomes about getting really good at what you're doing, understanding more, and then you can dive into then giving back and sharing with someone. And that's the purpose of this podcast. And I get to learn from guys like you, right? I get to have a platform to share with some kid who's maybe 13, 14, 15, 19, 24, figuring it out, maybe didn't have the best childhood, maybe they did. And maybe they can learn something from this that's going to help them along their journey.